500 Days of Summer is a cult classic romantic comedy featuring the manic pixie dream girl Zoe Deschanel as Summer and Jordan Gordon-Levitt as Tom, the millennial hipster, hopeless romantic, aspiring architect. The film was initially set in San Francisco. However, that changed when Joseph and director Mark Webb happened to take one of those Saturday morning LA Conservancy walking tours, and the script was rewritten for downtown Los Angeles. The locations chosen for the film were so impressive that location manager Michael Chicky won the California On Locations Award for Features in 2009. The impact of LA Conservancy Tour is writ large on the film. Historic architecture dominates. The centrality of Angel's Knoll and the view from the park bench on its hillside is emblematic of the storyline. Tom only sees what he wants to see. Tom only sees the historic architectural buildings, but not the parking lot, which Summer points out to him. Tom is also unable to see beyond his hopeless expectations of romance and recognize that this relationship was doomed from the start. The view shed from Angel's Knoll is a veritable who's who of Los Angeles architectural history, including the Continental Building, the Grand Central Market, the Million Dollar Theater, the Bradbury Building, and to the southeast, the grand Art Deco pyramid that is City Hall. The film is a non-linear narrative that disrupts temporality while relying on its architectural foundations to ground its realism. I draw here from Disserto's two modes of spatial narration, the map and the tour, as a basis through which to engage 500 Days of Summer. With the map, one is seeing and ordering places from above, while the tour narrates embodied practices from below. Where seeing from above is associated with maps as representation, the tour is about the embodied goings and doings of itinerant practices. Moreover, a focus on the practice of map production gets at issues around the translation of tangible urban topography into the film medium. The lever that drives the map in the tour, in this case, is cartographic practice. Flannery is an essential component of urban cinematic space. It requires an active agent with the wandering gaze, or in this case, the gaze of Tom, our downtown LA flaneur. Yet his gaze in the movie developed out of the itinerant practices that happen every Saturday at Pershing Square in downtown Los Angeles. Something extraordinary happens here, something that runs counter to LA's horizontal autotopia reputation, enshrined in Bonham's classic book of the four ecologies, Architectural Walking Tours. Los Angeles is the city that American intellects love to hate, and emblematic of the fragmented, dislocated postmodern cityscape. If Chicago reflects the old school American urban studies with staid patterns of concentric circles, LA is Kino capitalism laid out on the grid, a non-contiguous collage of parcelized, consumption-oriented landscapes, devoid of a conventional center. Part of LA's postmodern urban form is its downtown palimpsest history of architectural forms. Its early modern architecture on display through the Conservancy tours provides the aesthetic for 500 Days of Summer, including Romanesque revival, though with a Victorian interior, the ornamental Beaux Arts, Tom's favorite and LA's first skyscraper, and elegant Art Deco, the lavish turquoise Eastern Columbia Lofts building. More likely to be portrayed by film and television as some other American city, downtown LA is the backdrop for filmic elsewheres and elsewhens. Cartography is confronted with a fundamental problem. The world is infinitely complex, and therefore mapping requires generalization and abstraction. Thematic intent narrows the subject matter, but choices on what to include and not include are central to the mapping process. Data used to map 500 Days of Summer came from Film LA, a nonprofit agency that issues film permits. The data consists of 54 permits that include street addresses and start and stop dates of production. One of the first issues that arises in the geocoding process is that data can be flawed because film permits do not always align with what was filmed. In the end, 54 permits translated into 29 geocodable locations, and out of those, 21 were indexically referenced to the film's narrative. Following the process of geocoding comes ground truthing and indexing. Ground truthing is where the cartographer checks to see if the reference coordinates used to place locations on the map relate to what is found at that location on the ground. It can be accomplished in person through traveling to the location, or done in this case through Google Street View. Interior locations can be trued through photospheres like the Barclay Hotel, which doubled as a coffee shop in the production. Ground truthing is a cartographically motivated inferential walk through the traces of the virtual city. Indexing is the cartographic process of cinematic ground truthing. Indexing is fundamentally about building a topological relationship between the location's form and reference coordinates in cinematic and mapped space. Indexing can be complicated by places doubling for others, like that of Point Furman's Lighthouse in LA, which stands in for a wedding in San Diego. Though it is easy to recognize stars like the Bradbury Building, others may be less recognizable from the streets, like that of the Quality Cafe, a very famous location site used in filming in Hollywood. The cinematic topologies created every day in Los Angeles may be better to conceive of these as weather patterns that come and go in different neighborhoods and districts. In Los Angeles, the cinematic front is stalled over Tom's celluloid neighborhood and doesn't look likely to be stopping anytime soon. The architectural locations chosen for the production of 500 Days of Summer may seem idiosyncratic in comparison to the larger postmodern metropolitan area, but in terms of Los Angeles' urban cinematic space, this film lies in its heartland. Indexing cinematic locations exposes temporal rifts. Playing the role of Tom and Summer's place of work is the unique and historic Fenton Building. Its fourth floor was once the Roseland Roof, which served as a taxi dance hall in the 30s through 50s. During the era of Prohibition, reformers closed down brothels, and when the Jazz Age arrived, so did dance academies, where for one song men could purchase a lesson for 10 cents. Though the building has been removed, the neon Dancing Girls sign remains and was featured in the movie. Tom's favorite location, the park bench at Angel's Knoll, is situated between LA's past and future. At the top of the hill, Bunker Hill, once the most fashionable neighborhood with lavish Victorian homes, later fell on hard times. During the 30s through 60s, the Victorians fell into disrepair and became Pulp Fiction's Mean Street and film noir's ground zero. Beginning in 1955, Bunker Hill became the longest redevelopment project in LA history. Angel's Knoll is bordered by Angel's Flight, a century-old funicular that transports people from the top of Bunker Hill to the base at Grand Central Market. Angel's Knoll, long slated for redevelopment, was closed in 2013. Handel Architects' $1.2 billion mixed-use project will completely redesign Angel's Knoll while preserving Angel's Flight. Tom's favorite spot will soon become just another postmodern menagerie in downtown LA. Cinematic ground truthing with other forms of media shows how the social practices of a film extend outside the theater. Take Ilya Fox, a Zooey Deschanel lookalike who created the 500 Days of Summer project, where she recreates summer's fashion and reenacts scenes from the film. Her catalog of fashion, locations, and production designs constitute a geography of the enthusiast, where she has become an expert in all things summer. The park bench, up until 2013, was an iconic site on Instagram. Here, engagement with the film's location is a topophilic expression, a means of self-discovery, an emotional remapping of the pathways back to the moment when the film was first watched. Topophilia is a part of the placemaking activities individuals engage in on the cinematic streets of Los Angeles. Indexing involves strolling down the paths used to create the geography of film, as well as how the film and locations resonate with film viewers. A cartographic analysis of the film has two foci. It can situate film within an era and place, and it can accentuate and sharpen textual analysis. A majority of the film locations are in downtown where Tom lives and works. This love story is reflective of an era and place of the millennial generation in the urban core of LA and epitomizes the idea of the millennial city. An analysis of Tom's neighborhood was conducted using Esri's business analyst. Tom's neighborhood is emblematic of the millennials and classified as metro renters. Metro renters are characterized as highly mobile, well-educated single people in their late 20s and 30s who spend a large amount of money and time on clothes, rent, and technology. Metro renters also enjoy bars, restaurants, yoga, shop at Whole Foods, Banana Republic, and The Gap. Tom's spatial domain is suitable for pedestrian living, with the furthest distance between the locations being just under a mile from Tom's work to the Civic Center. Tom's downtown area is comprised of two zip codes that experienced the largest influx of millennials from 2011 through 2016. The two zip codes are also ranked amongst the most gentrified in the country. A cartographic analysis reveals how the masculine gaze of the protagonist, director, viewer becomes territorialized. Here, the hegemony of the male gaze is socially and spatially reproduced through Tom, who commands the stage and narrative action. The male protagonist, director, viewers also command the axis mundi of the film, the park bench, or Tom's favorite place. The park bench approximates the center of the narrative's geography by providing the image fact for the opening and closing scenes of the film. The park bench also approximates the center of an on-location site used for the film, thus reaffirming the male gaze in the formation of the film's cinematic landscape. Further, the female others, Summer and Rachel, serve as the constitutive dependents for the masculine dominant Tom, and thus are spatially positioned outside his domain and are only engaged, viewed, or framed with to advance his narrative. The density of filmed locations in downtown shows the spatial dominance of Tom's positionality in the narrative. Even though the romantic jaunts occur in proximate to Tom's domain, with the lone exception of being IKEA. Tom's failure to win the girl in his spatial domain is part of the twist of an otherwise standard boy meets girl storyline. However, a happy ending must meet the approval of the male gaze. Tom meets Autumn in his domain at the Bradbury Building in the epilogue. The connotative play of the female of seasons, Summer to Autumn, reaffirms the masculine dominant and its subordination of the feminine other to a transitory state. This paper situates cartographic cinema at the intersection of representation and practice, the objective view from above and the subjective view from below. It does so by using two spatial narrative modalities of the map and the tour. Through touring, we are actively engaged with going and doing, with the aesthetic ensemble of the locations that underlie the film's geography. Touring turns filmed locations into places that resonate with history, meaning, engagement, and purpose. While LA's Conservancy now includes the 500 Days of Summer architectural tour, a virtual one links the film to noir detectives like DOA at the Bradbury Building, or taxi dancing at the Fenton Building, and flop houses at Bunker Hill. The tour also extends to the postmodern future that will soon wipe away Angel's Knoll, creating an aesthetic for Deckard to roam the Ramble City. Cartographic analysis provides a means through which to situate a film as a cultural document reflective of a place and era. 500 Days of Summer is the millennials' Annie Hall, and the film's narrative footprint in Los Angeles offers a case study in millennial urban geography. The centrality of the masculine gaze in the narrative is enhanced through cartographic analysis that shows how the gaze becomes territorialized into a gendered logic of dominant and inferior people, places, and activities. A cartographic analysis therefore not only enhances and corroborates a textual analysis, but it can also cross-correlate a film's narrative to other spatial temporal data. Through touring, we incorporate the production and consumption practices that constitute the ongoing formation of the cinematic landscape. Through mapping, we engage a film in time and place and elaborate on its textual meaning. Thank you.